saw this week. Just happened to say, I saw this tweet from Dr. CBS and it really got me to thinking. Now, I've said this before, but we are quite literally living in a white man's wildest dreams. We are living deep within his Caucasian thoughts and desires. Before about the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I know some of the girls don't like it, okay, but I think it's useful in some way. But right here at the tippity top, you see self-actualization, achieving one's full potential, including creative activities, okay? Now down here, you see belonging and love needs, intimate relationships, friends, community. Now, because of the socio-political system of whiteness, white people have always had a sense of community and access to the financial and war powers. Not all y'all. Remember that. This means that they have had the time to solidify their system over literally hundreds of years, compounded thousands of thoughts and imaginations to create the society we are currently living in. And I said all that to say that in order for us to imagine a new world, you can't be fucking insufferable. That's why I make this Hope Core content, okay? Because we need to have joy and creativity in our movement in order for us to actually imagine what a new world looks like for all of us collectively. Because if you are in community, that means you're more likely to have collective thought and collective consideration. You might look around and say, hey, maybe people do need free healthcare. Or you'll look around and say, maybe all people should be housed. Maybe there should be harm reduction centers as well for people to actually get off of drugs safely. You might look around and realize that a universal basic income might not be that bad of an idea. Because being in community leads to social thought, collective social thought. And capitalism preys on our apathy, our hyper-individualism, and our mistrust of each other. I guess I said all that to say, capitalism wants you to be insufferable, so that way you can be miserable and alone. And if you're getting therapy from ChatGPT right now, I might be talking to you, babe. Because humans are communal animals, so what you're really looking for in that cold, dead robot is a friend. Go make one. If you made it this far into the video, go ahead and comment an egg emoji. Bye. Oh, yeah.
All right. What's up, guys? Yeah, I love her. All right, guys. What's up?
So,
Welcome.
Yeah, no egg emoji from me. They give me gas, but
yeah.
I love eggs, but they don't love me back. Okay, if I eat eggs, it's bad for me and everyone behind me. You know, it's like, but I'll give a rabbit emoji though.
Yeah, me too. All right, guys. What's up? Welcome to episode 7 of the A&M podcast. I'm Andre, and he's Michael, and we're coming to you from the ATP Network. You can catch the ATP Network on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and Rumble, and also too we on Apple Podcasts and Spotify as well. So if you can listen to us while you're working out or whatever, you know, we everywhere. All right, Mike, how's it been going?
Oh, it's going all right. Mostly, I got a doctor's appointment Tuesday about my arm. I've been having some issues with it.
Oh yeah.
It might be something with my rotator cuff, like maybe a pinched nerve or bursitis going on in there. I'll find out for sure on Tuesday. But I went up to Walgreens and got myself a shoulder brace and some lidocaine patches just to, because it's like it's Mainly like right around here, like below the shoulder itself, but above the elbow and like on the outside of the arm, as
Well,
opposed to
like
the interior. Yeah,
like
so
right
right
there.
there. But
Oh,
it's
okay.
really flares up badly at night when I'm lying down, and
Oh,
and
okay.
it's just unbearable then. Now during the day, not so much. As long as I'm not straining it too much, it's almost normal. But yeah, so probably it might be something nerve related. I do have herniated discs in my neck, and the worst ones are like right at the base where, like right at the base of my neck,
Yeah.
where like the bone spurs and the pinched nerve clusters, not just pinched nerves, but nerve clusters that
Oh,
go into my
wow.
arms and hands. So
Yeah.
depending on what's being pinched, it could be, yeah, pretty painful. So
Yeah.
hopefully,
Yeah. My coworker, he has arthritis in his back, and sometimes he said when it flares up, he said it gives him hell. So
yeah, and you can actually
yeah.
get arthritis at any time. All it requires is just degeneration of your tendons and ligaments. And
Okay.
unfortunately, and my ligaments and tendons have never really been all that great. In fact, I was enlisted in the United States Air Force in 2001 and was not able to complete basic training because of those problems. So, uh,
Okay.
yeah, my doctor said I had loose ligaments, which I looked up the meaning of that, and turns out hypermobile. So there's like, it's like it's why I'm able to do this,
Oh. Oh.
but I can't do it with my other hand. So yeah, it's like it's basically if
Okay.
you're double jointed, that's a symptom of being hypermobile. But it also means, uh, depending on how badly it is,
Yeah.
uh, that you might have like very slow movements because your limbs don't want to lock in or whatever. Um, so yeah, that can cause all sorts of problems. But my main issue is nerve damage from having herniated discs pinching down on where my spinal column starts pinching down on the nerves, and it's like yikes.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So
It sounds brutal. Whew.
yeah,
So
but as bad as I've got it right now, it's not nearly as bad as what Disney is going through with
oh,
its
wow.
movie, with its last two releases, Snow White and the new Captain America starring Anthony Mackie, uh, getting in trouble with the press, and then Jonathan Majors, obviously,
Yeah.
he's really in trouble. Um, but yeah, Disney is getting some of its backside handed to it at the box office. Let me go ahead and call this up because a Variety reported last week that Disney was scaling back the Snow White Hollywood premiere amid Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot controversies. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Rachel Zegler, you're not alone. She apparently was like virtually unknown, at least in the YouTuber sphere, until she got cast as Disney playing Snow White. Yeah, Latina
Yeah.
playing Snow White. Not that I have a problem with that, but it's
Yeah.
Snow White. Why is she called Snow White? Because she has skin as white as snow, lips as red as blood, hair as black as coal. Wait a minute, she's a fucking vampire. No, seriously, that's why the evil stepmother wanted the
yeah.
husband to bring back her heart, because she knew that's what you have to do to kill a vampire. Oh my god.
yeah.
There's actually short stories where Snow White is actually a vampire and the queen is the good guy who has to try and stop her. In fact, I think I still have that book somewhere. It's a collection of short stories, but I'll look it up. But it's really well written. But also, all joking aside, though, Zegler has been essentially 2025's answer to Brie Larson. If you're not familiar with Brie Larson's antics in 2019, she was cast to play Captain Marvel Carol Danvers' iteration of Captain Marvel. Before that, it was a Kree named Mar-Vell who came to Earth and became a superhero, and his name got pronounced as Marvel. And this was actually during the 70s or 80s. Because what happened was the original Captain Marvel was actually a character in Fawcett Comics, which was later bought up by DC Comics. And Fawcett was famously, or rather infamously, sued by DC over the character of Captain Marvel because of alleged similarities to Superman. But their origin stories were so different that they didn't really have a case. But DC had more money, Fawcett Comics didn't. So they reached an agreement where the title of the comic book was called Shazam, but the title character could still be called Captain Marvel. And after Fawcett Comics went under, and then DC got a bunch of its titles, including Captain Marvel, and it was renamed to Shazam later on, which is why now when you get into more modern iterations, he's not called Captain Marvel anymore, but he was the original. So anyway, Carol Danvers was a supporting character. She was like Ms. Marvel, the original one. And then she gets the title of Captain Marvel after the original is written out. And so Brie Larson is cast to play the title role in the MCU version. Gets her own movie. Her head swells to the size of Unicron, or possibly Galactus. And then there's this famous interview spat where Chris Hemsworth and Don Cheadle were stuck together doing a promo interview for the movie for Avengers Endgame and Captain Marvel. And Chris Hemsworth is being Chris Hemsworth and kind of trolling her because she's like boasting about how she's the baddest ass in the MCU and how she's stronger than anyone else, including Thor. And Chris Hemsworth is like, oh, you want to be the next Tom Cruise? And she's like, oh no, I'm going to be the first me. Thank you very much. Being very condescending and very bitchy. Pardon to people who don't like that word, but tough. But yeah, so needless to say, when the Marvels was released, was it last year or the year before? It didn't do so well because there was like too many characters in the pot because Disney doesn't know what it's doing. So Rachel Zegler basically decided, looking at Brie Larson and how she basically helped torpedo Captain Marvel as an MCU franchise, she looked at that and decided, yeah, that's for me. That's who I want to look up to. So she's been going around being an insufferable twit, but then Gal Gadot has been even worse. If you're not familiar with Gal Gadot, she played Wonder Woman. She's playing the evil stepmother in Snow White, but she's also been very vocal in supporting the genocide of Palestinians by Israel, and she's got a very long history of that that we'll get into. So, here we've got Variety.com. Disney was hosting a Hollywood premiere of Snow White on March 15th, but the studio won't be rolling out a robust red carpet like it usually does. So the festivities included a pre-party and screening at the El Capitan Theater with Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot, who played the evil queen, expected to attend. However, it wasn't included the dozens of media outlets usually invited by Disney to interview the cast and creatives at its premieres. Instead, coverage will be limited to photographers and a house crew. So the studio did not comment for the story, but the scale-back plans come amid controversy surrounding the Mark Webb-directed movie, which hits theaters March 21st, which is in 2 days.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, because we're recording this on the 19th.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So some toxic Disney fans questioned Snow White being played by Zegler when her casting was announced because she's a Latina actress. The West Side Story star also faced backlash when she called the 1937 original dated because the prince literally stalks Snow White. That doesn't actually happen. He's basically going through the forest and comes upon her, what he assumes is her preserved corpse. So it's not like, he's being all Mr. Creepy Stalker. It's really not. So, tell us you haven't actually seen the original movie without saying you haven't seen it. Oh, I'm just going to say stuff about it that actually never happened.
That's typical. That's typical human nature right there, man.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. We know you're a liar. Um, so, in an interview with Variety at D23 2 years ago, Zegler said she's not going to be saved by the prince. She's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be. So basically, uh, it's going to portray Snow White much the same way that Angelina Jolie portrayed Maleficent in the title movie, which kind of turns her into an anti-hero from the Sleeping Beauty movie. And then Peter Dinklage, who was the dwarf actor who more recently played in Game of Thrones, he was speaking up out about the movie's portrayal of little people for perpetuating negative stereotypes. Literally, no offense to anything, but I was sort of taken aback. He said on the WTF with Mark Maron podcast in January 2024, they were very proud to cast a Latino actress as Snow White, but you're still telling the story of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Take a step back and look at what you're doing there. So following those remarks, Disney said in a statement to Good Morning America, to avoid reinforcing stereotypes from the original animated film, we're taking a different approach with these 7 characters and have been consulting members of the dwarfism community. And so they basically created a bunch of freakish looking CGI monstrosities that gave people nightmares.
Oh God!
So Zegler reasons that the backlash to the movie is due to the passion for the original film. I interpret people's sentiments toward this film as passion, she said in an interview with the March issue of Vogue Mexico. What an honor to be part of something that people feel so passionately about. We're not always going to agree with everyone who surrounds us, and all we can do is our best. Quotes were independently translated from Spanish to English by Variety. So world politics have also come into play. Zegler has promoted Free Palestine on social media. Okay, nothing actually wrong with that.
That's good.
He actually stood up and spoke out about this because even though she's an insufferable asshole, pushing the whole Brie Larson gimmick, but it should not be controversial to oppose a genocide and free a people who've been suffering under apartheid. Okay, this is really no different than people who were supporting Black Africans trying to win freedom in South Africa and take back their own country.
Exactly.
All right. So, she's saying Free Palestine. That's actually a good thing to be commended. But at the same time, Godot, who's an Israeli war criminal, has become an outspoken supporter of Israel's genocide on social media, as well as in a passionate speech she delivered March 4th when she was honored at the Anti-Defamation League's annual summit. Now, keep in mind, the Anti-Defamation League actually defended Elon Musk after he twice did the Nazi salute at Caligula Trump's inauguration. So just to give you an idea of just how credible the Anti-Defamation League really is.
Deeply unserious.
Where it labels even mild criticism of Israel as anti-Semitism. Yeah. So Godot was saying, like, never did I imagine that on the streets of the United States and different cities around the world, we would see people not condemning Hamas, but celebrating, justifying, and cheering on a massacre of Jews, as she said in part. And Brianna Joy Gray over on Twitter, she was remarking, because Godot says she's an 8th generation Israeli. That's like claiming to be an 8th generation computer user, according to Brianna Joy Gray. There have been only about 10 generations in America's history since 1776. A choice to repeatedly tell easily disprovable lies feels like a kind of psychosis, and it really is, because Godot is basically claiming that her ancestors were there before 1947, which I don't know if they were or not, probably not. But it's like, you don't get to claim to be an 8th generation native when you haven't even been there for 3 or 4 generations tops.
Yep. Exactly.
And also, she was part of the IOF in Israel, helping to commit war crimes, and infamously cheered on the murder of some Palestinian children on a beach who were doing nothing but playing soccer, or maybe it was volleyball or something. But she was actually cheering that on. So she's far right trash, obviously. And then she played a psychopathic Wonder Woman in Zack Snyder's Injustice League, and also Wonder Woman 1984. where she really demonstrated not only that she's evil incarnate, but also that she can't act for shit. So, yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on here. So, Godot stayed away from politics in the past. Well, no, she didn't really. But after the October 7th attacks on an apartheid concert where a lot of Israelis were taken as prisoners of war. Most of them were actually members of the Israeli military, which you don't actually hear about.
Yeah, you don't hear about that in the mainstream.
So basically, needless to say, Snow White has not been doing all that well. It's projected to tank at the box office with regards to box office projections. Now, keep in mind, the movie has not yet been officially released. Okay, there was a premiere for it, which is separate from the general box office, but already publications are projecting that it probably will not make a whole lot of money on release. So it says here, and this is from Forbes magazine, but I'll show you a couple of other sources. But it says projections for Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot's live-action version of Disney's Snow White have been sliding in the weeks ahead of the movie, which is opening in theaters Friday, 21st of March. Based on the time-honored fairy tale by the Brothers Grimm, Snow White, directed by Mark Webb, The Amazing Spider-Man, is a live-action remake of Walt Disney's 1937 animated family movie classic starring Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Apparently, neither of them learned anything from the remakes of Sleeping Beauty or 101 Dalmatians.
Oh, God, yeah.
So Snow White, of course, has been the subject of several controversies over the past couple of years. Among them, as Forbes has previously detailed, see the link below. Disney caught heat. Casting Zegler and Peter Dinklage has criticized the idea of using dwarf actors for the live-action update. Another controversy erupted when set photos of the Seven Dwarves, of which only one of the actors had dwarfism, surfaced. In the completed movie, the Seven Dwarves are all CGI characters, and they look like something out of a nightmare. I've seen images. God. They are nightmare fuel.
Oh, God, yeah. It's going to tank in the box office, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, okay, like, you know how Sonic the Hedgehog, when it released initial photos of the CGI Sonic character and fans reacted badly? Well, the studio famously went back to the drawing board and retooled it to look much more like the video game character, and it worked.
Yeah.
Well, this is the reverse of that.
I can't wait to see that shit. Oh my God, man. Yeah. You can't even get a carrot, man. I ain't surprised.
Yeah, so also as Forbes reported, Zegler took a pro-Palestine stance in the Israel-Gaza conflict. Well, no, it's a genocide, okay? Israel is committing genocide in Gaza, all right? An ideology opposite of her Israeli castmate Godot. Perhaps the biggest controversy, though, started directly with Zegler. The film credits include Steven Spielberg's remake of West Side Story and a starring role in the Hunger Games prequel movie, The Hunger Games: A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Who the fuck comes up with these titles?
Songbirds and Snakes.
A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. It's like,
what in the fuck?
Have they been taking lessons from Alex Klutzman over at CBS? Oh my God. So the 2022 red carpet interview with Extra TV, see below, went viral when Zegler said the original movie was dated and took a shot at the pivotal character of the prince. The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her, which, again, never actually happened. And she's saying, weird, so we didn't do that this time. It's like, obviously she never actually saw the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been a while since I've seen it, but I do remember seeing a reissue of it in the theaters, and the prince doesn't actually stalk her.
Yeah, but why would you make an assumption like that?
Chances are she read something online, maybe something written by the Mary Sue, which is an online tabloid. But it's clear she hasn't actually seen the movie. Now, granted, there's nothing wrong with supporting Palestine. Everyone should be supporting it. But I think at least 50% of the controversy that's liable to tank this movie is coming from Godot herself, who really is embodying the evil queen to a T. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, Snow White's disappointing box office weekend could be among Disney's worst live-action remakes. And this is from MovieWeb.com. Disney's Snow White remake has been in plenty of headlines as of late, but more often than not, they have little to do with the movie itself. In fact, early critic reaction suggests that the latest live-action reimagining surpasses expectations, especially thanks to an inspired performance by the lead Rachel Zegler. Well, that's kind of doubtful, but it's somewhat surprising turn of events considering the hate campaign that has been thrown at the movie star. Some of it justified, but some of it not. Because again, she has admittedly been doing the Brie Larson shtick, which basically involves being an insufferable ass clown, trying to be like, oh yeah, girl power. It's like, yeah, you've clearly never seen the Terminator or Alien or Aliens or Terminator 2, or for that matter, Titanic.
Especially Titanic, though. Hang on.
Yeah, I mean, you can have a strong female lead without being a 5'2" waif beating up on like a 6'4", 400-pound brick wall.
Oh my!
I mean that was barely believable with the Battle Angel Alita reboot, which I actually liked the movie, although it had a lot of very obvious problems going into it. But it was still one of those things where you've got a cyborg with a body that's actually designed to fight and take on opponents much larger, and of course, if you're smaller and faster than your opponent, that can give you an edge. But that's one thing. But if you're going like every single movie or TV show where you've got like some 5'0" twig going up against like a powerhouse and winning, no, I'm sorry, but there's ways to show a strong female character without breaking suspension of disbelief, because and then making the guys either barely existent or running jokes throughout the movie. It's like the way they disrespected Samuel L. Jackson's Nick Fury in the Captain Marvel movie, for example, making him into borderline clown. I mean, he tried to play it straight, but it was pretty obvious that he was more or less a comic relief.
Yeah.
Especially with regards to how he loses his eye. It's like, it's like, what the fuck? And this is how you're doing girl power at the expense of insulting a black man. Okay, yeah, thanks. Way to be racist, white Karen, Disney.
Yeah.
Because even when Disney pretends to be woke, it still has to find a way to be incredibly racist or otherwise bigoted. So, yeah. So, but yeah. So according to the latest project, Snow White projections. I don't know why they say projects. It's projections. Snow White is looking at a domestic debut of between $45 and $55 million at the weekend box office. Meanwhile, the global weekend tally could reach $100 million, putting the live-action remake at about $150 million by Monday morning. Well, that's if it's lucky. It might not.
Yeah.
The budget for Snow White is reportedly upwards of about $250 million. However, there's a caveat with that, because Hollywood Accounting rather infamously excludes the budget for marketing and distribution, which, depending on the size of the movie, could match or even exceed the production budget. So let's say if it's something like Avengers Endgame, where they spend like probably in the ballpark of $750 million total, because when you factor in like the $350 million production budget, but then you're spending at least that much promoting the movie, getting it to theaters, getting people to the theaters to watch it, and then of course there's all the merchandising and all that stuff. So you're spending quite a lot of money promoting it. Now for Snow White, okay, so let's assume the $250 million production budget is accurate. It doesn't look like they've really gone out of the way to really push it to get people to see it in theaters. So
Yeah, I
Disney
noticed that.
does not have all that much faith in it. So maybe
Yeah.
it'll have a production budget in the ballpark of like maybe 60 to 100 million. And I'm just guessing that number because Disney doesn't, I mean, most studios do not put out the production budget numbers.
Right.
Or like, I mean, they do put out the production budget, but it's usually not quite accurate because at that amount of money, it's like you're kind of like rounding to the nearest number that looks good. But then you don't factor in like any of the marketing or distribution or merchandising or anything else associated with actually selling the movie to the public. So my best guess, it probably did not spend nearly that much on marketing and distribution because if it's not really doing that much of a premiere, that's a sign that it doesn't have a whole lot of faith in this movie.
Yeah. Hey, you know what though? I really haven't seen much like advertising of this movie until
No, you
like
haven't.
last week.
I mean, people are talking about Mickey 17, but Boots Riley was on Twitter talking about the box office for that movie and remarking how that one's been doing, and it didn't really have much of a marketing budget either. Now it's already done like $92 million, I think. I think that was the number that I saw quoted. But keep in mind as well that this was not meant to be a major movie, so that if it is doing better than expected, that's actually a good thing, especially considering that the studio didn't really give it much of a marketing budget. But here, the signs and portents here really kind of indicate that this movie probably is not going to do well at the box office. It'll be lucky to break even from its total budget.
That's a stretch.
Yeah, because if you look at what's going on now, this apparently is a rumor that has been disproven, but apparently there's a viral going around on Twitter claiming that somebody trashed Godot's star on the Walk of Fame, which apparently is just a recycled photo from what was done to Donald Trump's star in 2018. But the awards ceremony was actually crashed by demonstrators, pro-Palestinian demonstrators and pro-genocide demonstrators. So the crowd reportedly chanted slogans and held signs even before the actor got up to the podium, which delayed the event, and police and law enforcement officials had to intervene. But apparently someone on Twitter posted an image that has since been pointed out as belonging to Donald Trump. In 2018, someone smashed his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. But Godot is like, she's really playing the victim here, even though she's not.
Yeah.
And honestly, she really is a piece of work. I mean, she's she was on a host of the program Impact from National Geographic, where episode 5 highlights the displacement of indigenous people. But she served in the Israeli military as a combat trainer during its brutal 2006 war against Lebanon, which involved indiscriminate Israeli airstrikes that killed 900 civilians. So she was actually training the war criminals to kill civilians. And in 2007, she parlayed her military identity into a modeling career, and that's when she transitioned into Hollywood. And it's like Women of Israel Defense Forces on the cover of Maxim and all that shit. So, so she's very good at playing the victim. But in 2021, under the headline Wonder Woman and War Crimes by Khaldoun Khalil, talking about Wonder Woman 1984 had a lot of racist stuff going on, and Gal Gadot made it even worse. Content warning racism and war crimes. So, and this is the author's words here, so I'm just going to quote verbatim here. I watched Wonder Woman 1984 and judged on the standards of a DC superhero movie. It's pretty good. I have HBO, so didn't have to pay or promote it to see it. I haven't seen the first one, but I'd say this one was on par with DC's Suicide Squad, which is not that big of a compliment, actually, because that one
Yeah,
really tanked.
yeah. They
Kristen
trying to be
Wiig,
nice.
yeah, Kristen Wiig and Pedro Pascal do all the heavy lifting, and there's an early scene where they're just having a great time riffing off of each other's characters, and Godot's Diana Prince breaks up the fun. That scene is a pretty good metaphor for the entire movie. Godot does an okay job as a dour and unflinching Wonder Woman, but her Diana Prince comes off as wooden, and she spends almost the entire movie in that persona. Well, to be perfectly honest, Godot can't act for shit. If you watch her in any of Zack Snyder's movies, from Batman versus Superman, Dawn of Justice, wow, talk about cringe title, and then in Justice League, yeah, she really played up the psychopath aspect of that. And watching some of her other movies, yeah, it's clear this woman never took an acting class ever. So yeah,
True. That's true. I agree.
yeah. Some people are born talented, others have to work at it, and others are neither born with it nor do they ever work at it. That is Gal Gadot to me. But yeah, so yeah, Godot comes off as wooden. The best parts of the movie, outside of every second of Kristen Wiig, are the more fantastic elements such as Wonder Woman swinging from lightning or turning a jet invisible. That's about it for positive movie elements. Now, for the negative stuff, there's a lot of cringe in the movie. The main romance plot is based on the non-consensual use of a man's body for sex by a ghost or spirit, which is Steve Rogers. Now, in the first Wonder Woman movie that Godot starred in, Chris Pine plays Steve Rogers, who's the love interest for Wonder Woman, and he dies by the end of the movie. Spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen it. Well, in the sequel that came out a few years ago, Wonder Woman makes a wish, and Pedro Pascal's character has attained this artifact that causes everyone's wish to come true. So Godot wishes for Steve Rogers to come back, and he does, sort of. He possesses the body of some random guy on the street for no reason we can think of in particular, but then, you know, it's implied that she goes to bed with him while he's in the body of this complete stranger. Rapey much?
Yeah.
Like, if the roles were reversed and a male superhero had done this to a woman who is possessed by the spirit of his dead lover, it would have been a complete clusterfuck in the press. But because it was role reversed, it was considered cringe, but nothing really to make a big fuss about, because apparently, so the movie also has a strange message about how wishes are dangerous and to be grateful for the status quo, which, yeah, that's kind of on track with the messaging of Hollywood superhero movies. Like any attempt to mess with the status quo is dangerous and evil, no matter how awful the status quo is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's actually pretty much all the messaging of the MCU, but for DC as well. But the author says, I'm going to focus on my area of expertise in my critique and leave the exploration of consent in this context to others. At Columbia, which is the university in the news right now for arresting and deporting student protesters, including
Mahmoud Khalil.
Who's in a prison in Louisiana, apparently.
Yeah, my state I was in.
Yeah, while they try to revoke his green card. He's actually a permanent resident of the United States with an American citizen wife who's pregnant with his child, could give birth in any day now. But they're trying to deport him, not on the basis of any crime that he's been accused of, but on the basis that he supposedly poses a threat to national security interests.
Yeah.
How protesting a genocide poses a threat to national security, I don't know. Or to American foreign policy interests.
Yeah.
But considering America's foreign policy consists of committing genocide or enabling genocide, and it's doing both right now in Israel and also in Syria and Congo and other countries through its proxies. Yemen. But yeah, because Trump is bombing Yemen right now. Did I say lemon? Oh my God, no.
Yemen. Yemen, yeah. You good,
man. He's bombing Yemen right now.
Yemen, yeah.
Because the Houthis, once the Israelis broke the ceasefire agreement, the Yemenis went right back to uh, uh, enforcing the blockade in the Red Sea. So we're watching a lot of shit unfold, and Godot unfortunately is cheering it on, which is one of the reasons why Snow White is looking likely to lose money at the box office, because Disney has two people who are basically going out of their way to be controversial, which
Yeah,
in Hollywood is a double-edged sword.
yeah. Those are career enders in my book.
Yeah, so they're pissing off pretty much everyone on the left-right spectrum.
Yeah.
But so the author earned her graduate degree at Columbia in international security policy. She's a scholar of Middle East politics, specializing in counterintelligence and defense policies. Worked in the oil industry for almost 20 years. Undergrad degrees in international criminal justice, specifically war crimes, human rights, and antiquities theft. Also completed ICJ final thesis on modern war crimes using several case studies, including the 2006 war on Lebanon by Israel, and during Israel's 2014 assault on occupied Gaza. She wrote articles on the Hannibal Doctrine and other war crimes. So this is the author giving her credentials as to what she's about to talk about in this article. So throughout Wonder Woman 1984, Arabs and Muslims are portrayed as religious zealots, backward tyrants, and dirt poor victims. Of the two Arab Muslim coded characters who are granted wishes, one asks for the removal of heathens from their land, and the other asks for nuclear bombs. So first, the King of Crude character is an Egyptian Arab whose wish, she misspells whose, it's supposed to be WHOSE with no apostrophe, but probably missaid in spell check. But the wish conjures a gigantic wall that separates families and land. Shortly after meeting this character, the film gets its first big fight, exceedingly dumb Arab soldiers providing cannon fodder. During this fight scene, 4 Arab children cross the road playing soccer and are saved by Wonder Woman after she flies to them on a lassoed rocket-propelled grenade. This last scene made my stomach churn for reasons I'll detail below. Gal Gadot plays Wonder Woman. She served as a non-combatant in the Israeli military in 2006 during the Lebanon War, and during the 2014 assault on Gaza, she publicly supported the Israeli military. And as I pointed out earlier, she trained soldiers to commit war crimes in Lebanon. So, she also claimed that Palestinian women and children were being used as human shields, which is a lie, as Israeli munitions killed over 500 children over 50 days. Also, for the past 20 years, Israel has been building an illegal separation wall between Israelis and Palestinians, placing occupied land on their side of the wall, but without the Palestinians they have subjected with apartheid policies. And then it goes on to describe how Wonder Woman 1984 is thus aptly titled because, like Orwell's novel, it flips fact and history on its head to create a narrative that suits the powerful and casts the weak as the problem. So the soccer kids. So in 1984 Wonder Woman movie, her boyfriend fires an RPG towards 4 Arab kids playing soccer. She rides a rocket and scoops up the kids before they're run over by other Arabs. Now, in the real world, Gal Gadot praised the Israeli military while bombs wiped out entire families in Gaza. She called the victims human shields. The most infamous incident involved 4 young boys from one family, the Backers. They were playing soccer on a beach in Gaza when they were targeted and killed by an Israeli strike. They were photographed playing soccer moments before their deaths, as was the resulting carnage. Because, you get blown apart by a bomb, it's not going to be pretty. I have seen things I cannot unsee. So wishing for bombs. In Wonder Woman 84, a Muslim-coded character squats in a cave with an AK-47 and wishes for a nuclear bomb. In the real world, no terrorist group has ever acquired or used a nuclear weapon. Only one Muslim country has such weapons, 2 if you count India, which has a huge Muslim population, and no Arab country has such weapon. In the Middle East, Israel is the only state with nuclear weapons, and in 1973 it even postured to make use of them during the Sinai War. So in conclusion, racist tropes are repeatedly used in Wonder Woman 1984 to cast Arabs and Muslims as a source of their own troubles. And Wonder Woman, as played by Gal Gadot, is her savior. So Gadot basically is a real piece of work here. And, just reading what's happening with Snow White and her contributions to why this movie is expected to tank at the box office really just kind of illustrate why Disney is really going downhill in terms of its product, because it just does not seem to have any focus. In fact, Jonathan Majors, who is the lead in the new Captain American movie, if I'm not mistaken, or was it Anthony Mackie? I forget whom. So yeah, Jonathan Majors reportedly admits to assaulting his ex, Grace Jabari, in resurfaced audio. This was published today.
Oh, jeez.
So his tumultuous relationship with Grace Jabari is back in the spotlight as a resurfaced audio clip seemingly shows a former Marvel star confessing to assaulting his ex. In the newly released audio clip obtained by Rolling Stone and published on Monday, Majors reportedly can be heard admitting to strangling Jabari and pushing her against a car during a conversation with a British dancer and movement coach. Majors was convicted in late 2023 for attacking Jabari in a different incident during a car ride in Manhattan. Per Rolling Stone, the couple's conversation was captured in the aftermath of a days-long fight between Majors and his then-girlfriend. The release of the audio comes just days before the much-anticipated premiere of Majors' film Magazine Dreams, which had previously been scrapped from its original December 2023 release. So, yeah. And then, of course, this is tying back into Marvel's movie, which is a new Captain America movie where the Falcon takes over the role of Captain America. And I think Jonathan Majors was originally cast to play Falcon, and then I think he was replaced by Anthony Mackie. I don't remember. I haven't really followed the story, so don't quote me on this. But this is something that he is making headlines for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
Now, Majors also revealed in an interview that he had been the victim of childhood sexual abuse. So, and it is actually quite unfortunately well known that victims of abuse do have a higher tendency to become abusers themselves. So, that's not an excuse for Majors, but it does kind of add a bit of context to some of the problems that he's going through. But yeah, so this is a guy you really do not want making headlines at a time when you need your movie to do well at the box office. And Anthony Mackie, who like I said, I think he's the one who replaced Jonathan Majors as Falcon, and is now playing Captain America in the new movie, but he's gone on record as kind of defending Majors. So yeah, this is one of those situations where Disney is really trying to salvage a couple of movies, but really kind of like, we don't expect them to really make any money at the box office. We're probably going to lose money because our lead actors are making headlines for all the wrong reasons. Remember that thing about negative publicity? It's a double-edged sword. Sometimes it works, but more often than not, it doesn't.
Yeah,
and this is the edge that is cutting Disney, and it's at the point now where Disney is really it's at a crossroads, and it seems to be making all the wrong choices as to what direction it wants to go down. I don't think its leadership really even knows what direction the company should go.
Yeah, agreed.
I think, I mean, Star Wars was run into the ground with all these rather controversial decisions made by Kathleen Kennedy and directors Jar Jar Abrams and Ruan Johnson. Yeah, you can tell I don't like those two.
Yeah. Hey, say how you feel about them. Hey, might as well, Hey,
don't even get me started. But yeah, it's like you take. I mean, Star Wars was already struggling with the prequel movies because George Lucas thought he could do a Silmarillion, telling the backstory that led up to his original trilogy. Now even J.R.R. Tolkien, which Lucas channels quite adequately in the original Star Wars trilogy. If you're not aware of the parallels, Obi-Wan Kenobi is Gandalf, Darth Vader is Gollum in a way,
Yeah.
and then Palpatine is Sauron. But I am convinced that when George Lucas was a kid in the 1950s reading the Lord of the Rings trilogy, somewhere in the back of his mind, he was thinking, Gollum got done dirty. He's the one who ends up destroying the One Ring. Great, great, terrific subversion of expectations.
Mm-hmm.
But he falls off the ledge, and what? That's it? That's how the One Ring is destroyed by accident? Are you kidding me? So I think when he made Return of the Jedi, because he'd already started Vader on the road to redemption and The Empire Strikes Back by making him conflicted over what to do with his son. So, he decided, okay, so I'm going to have Darth Vader, much like Gollum, be the one to destroy the Emperor, not Luke. But he's going to do it quite deliberately to save his son. It's not going to be an accident where he gets what he wants and then he's so busy celebrating that he falls into the pit. No, that's not happening. No, I'm deliberately casting the bad guy into the pit. Okay, yeah. So he had that perfect ending to the trilogy, but then he decides to do the prequels and does a bunch of unnecessary retcons.
Yeah.
And kind of diminishes, because the one thing you don't want to do with your antagonist is make him look too human.
Yeah.
Because if you're telling the story of how Darth Vader went from being an innocent little boy to becoming one of the most evil people in the galaxy, you've got to make him already inclined towards evil.
Yeah.
And Lucas really, I mean, this is why he needed his wife, his ex-wife, to be there editing those prequel movies to try and rein in his excesses. Because George Lucas is a kind of genius who desperately needs someone slapping his hands away from the keyboard at regular intervals just to make sure he doesn't go off the rails. All right. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love George Lucas. I love his body of work. He's actually a lot better than people give him credit for. But it's quite clear that very often he lets his ego get the best of him, and that he's too willing to. He's almost too willing to critique his own work, where he second guesses himself. And so with the special edition version of the trilogy, he starts making all these changes that are really unnecessary. I mean, like some of the technical stuff, okay, fine. You want to add in some effects that you couldn't do before, that's fine. But you're writing in a scene with Jabba the Hutt that makes him look like a sad worm CGI slug, as opposed to the massive three-dimensional animatronic suit puppet that we saw in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah,
which looked real because it was a physical construct and they made it look real.
Yeah,
like a creature that actually had weight and depth to it. And then for the CGI version with Harrison Ford as Han Solo, you shoehorn him in just because you can. And it's like, dude, we don't need that scene. We already get it. Yes, he Han Solo dumped the cargo. Yes, he's got a price on his head. Yes, he just had an encounter with a bounty hunter who was going to shoot him, but was so busy flapping his lips that he didn't notice Han drawing on him from under the table to shoot him. Okay, and then he has to ruin that scene by having Han shoot second or at the same time. It's like, no. So Lucas did kind of shit the bed with the prequels. Make to wrap up a very long and extended story, but I needed to give you the background before I go into it with what went wrong with Star Wars, because after the prequels, Lucas was pretty much done. I think he knew, but between the criticism he got over the prequels and that it takes him like 20 years to get around to making a movie. After he's done with the last one, he knew he wasn't going to live long enough to make a Star Wars sequel trilogy. So he sold Lucasfilm to Disney with the promise that Kathleen Kennedy, who he maneuvered in there as president of Lucasfilm, and swore to Bob Iger that she was great, and hoped that she would defend his vision at Disney. Nope, she sold out to Bob Iger. And they immediately started making all these changes. They basically unwrote the ending to the original trilogy because it's not like you can have characters move on from where we last saw them. No, you have to reset them to the point where we first saw them.
Yeah. Right.
Because God forbid the characters should ever grow or change with time.
Yeah.
That's why I don't like most sequels, because they just rehash the first movie. It's like they didn't need to make a sequel to Home Alone either, but it's basically just watching the same movie all over again. It's like, why would I?
It is.
I still have
Yeah.
not seen the second movie all the way through. Maybe a couple of scenes
Wow.
caught on
Yeah.
when it was playing on TV. But I've gone out on my way to avoid seeing it because
Yeah.
I've seen just enough of the movie to know that it's basically a rehash of the first film. Why would I want to do that?
Yeah.
So I'm watching The Force Awakens in the movie theaters and thinking, wait, I'm just watching the first Star Wars all over again, but worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why the fuck would I? And then The Last Jedi was like, no, I'm done. Rian Johnson
Yeah.
completely shat all over Star Wars and pissed off so many fans that they had to bring back Jar Jar Abrams, who was the absolute worst person to bring back to try and fix the mess. And
Yeah.
then he makes it even worse, going in the opposite direction. All right,
Yeah,
so this
man,
is where
crazy.
Disney is right now. It's ruined Star Wars. It's ruined Marvel. Its reboots are a sad, sick joke. I mean, the Lion King, Maleficent, The Little Mermaid. I mean, they were all
All
horrible.
jokes.
Peter Pan
All
and Wendy. It's like, there was this one YouTuber who was criticizing another called The Critical Drinker. Now, The Critical Drinker is basically, I think he's either a Scotsman or someone who puts on a Scottish accent. I don't know how legitimate it is, but he usually pretends to be drunk when he does the voiceovers for his videos. And he's complaining about how the new Peter Pan movie is all woke and instead of the Lost Boys, it's the Lost diverse group of whatevers. And this one critic of the Critical Drinker was like basically insinuating that he's bigoted and anti-woke and right-wing, which, to be fair, he is. But in this instance, he's complaining that remaking the Lost Boys into a diverse group was justified because it was originally written to cater to upper middle class white Victorian males. But if you actually think about for whom the original Peter Pan was written and what the actual message was of Peter Pan and Wendy, and the moral behind the story of the Lost Boys and Peter Pan, is that it actually is necessary at some point to grow up and to become a productive human adult member of society. And
right.
And who was the biggest demographic that needed that point hammered in? White males.
I'm about to say white males. Yeah.
Who
Yeah.
apparently
Makes sense.
were behaving as though growing up and being responsible adults and not genocidal maniacs, conquering the entire planet like they're on some kind of adventure. Because I'm pretty sure, Peter Pan and Wendy were a response to the likes of Rudyard Kipling. Rudyard Kipling, yeah. So because he wrote like the Jungle Book and all this other stuff, which is kind of like it's kind of like a very racist, even for its time, caricature of people in other countries that the United Kingdom had colonized. And so it's really kind of a telling message that the central premise of the original story is that white boys need to grow up and become men and leave behind childish behavior. And this guy's ripping on a critic of the Disney live action reboot of its original animated film and completely misses the whole point of the original story and why it's actually important to stick with that original point.
Right.
Because you got to have pandering to target demographic instead of actual representation.
Yep.
Because
Exactly.
I mean, I know it's racist to refer to people of color as tokens, but the problem here is that Disney actually is using people of color and women as tokens because
Yes.
the way in which these characters are depicted on the screen, very often, very mean, unsympathetic, unlikable, uh, overpowered. I mean, Brie Larson's Captain Marvel in the 2019 movie is ridiculously overpowered, and at no point ever feels like she's ever in danger. So, it's like, well, why should we root for her? She's like a goddess coming down from Mount Olympus to slum it and then beat up on the bad guy and defeat him all too easily. But supposedly she's being held back all this time. And it's like, in what way was she ever held back in the movie to begin with?
Right.
So even then, like, this supposedly feminist message is getting all muddled because it's not really coming across that she is being held back.
Right.
In fact, there's actually a scene that got deleted from that movie where, some biker who doesn't know who she is, tries to come on to her and she basically breaks his arm, steals his jacket and his motorcycle and rides off with it, which apparently that scene made her look even more unsympathetic than she already did in that movie, because at no point did we ever get any impression that she was ever in any danger or in fear of her life, because she knows she's in control the whole time. So you're basically showing, okay, yeah, the guy's being a jerk, but you're the one with the power to break every bone in his body, and you do actually break his bones and steal his bicycle and his jacket. So how are you scoring one for women? It would be one thing if he was actually beating up on a woman who does not have superpowers, and like maybe he's beating up on his wife or his kid or whatever, and then she goes to rescue him, and that's her save the cat moment, as described by Blake Snyder in his book Save the Cat. That's a rather underappreciated book, by the way. Save the Cat. It's basically the first in a series on screenwriting. It's very controversial. A number of people kind of criticize it, somewhat justifiably, in the way it promotes certain methods of screenwriting that I think have kind of contributed to the lack of writing today, because you're focused more on meeting story beats instead of telling the actual story. So that, I think, is a legit criticism. But the guy died, unfortunately, prior to 2012 when I was taking screenwriting class. So, what we've got of his work is what we've got. But if you take that in tandem with Sitfield's screenplay or Stephen King's on writing, where you actually learn how to write, that the emphasis should be on the story, and the story should be moving the plot forward. If you're doing a plot-driven movie where the plot is moving the story forward, no, you're doing it backwards. Because what people care about are characters. All right, it's who we identify with. All right, the Terminator is a character-driven story. Alien is a character-driven story. I mean, a lot of it is plot-driven, but it's mostly about the character of Ellen Ripley, who she is. Someone who's no nonsense, by the book, and that is why she survives. Whereas everyone else who doesn't go by the book and who's either slacks off or breaks the rules ends up getting killed.
Right.
Right. That's how you do a strong female character, by the way, and the way you depict the character on the screen. Ripley may not be very likable at the start of the movie, but she's the smart one who actually knows her job and does it, and that's why she lives.
Yeah.
Linda Hamilton in The Terminator. Okay, so like Dark Fate, she has a line where she's saying to the new Sarah Connor, who's like this waif, who's like, I forget her name. She's played by some nobody who completely forgettable stand-in for the next Sarah Connor, but Linda Hamilton is like saying you're just a womb, because she assumes that she's destined to give birth to the next future leader, which is kind of like a dig at how Linda Hamilton's character is supposed to be perceived in the original film. Of course, that was never actually the case, because if you actually watch the film, Kyle Reese, played by Michael Biehn, when Sarah asks him, why did you volunteered for this mission? Why? And he says it's a chance to meet the legend Sarah Connor, who taught her son to fight and and became this warrior in her own right with her own reputation as a hero. You know, the mother, literally the mother of the future, who nurtured and taught her son to be the man he became.
Right.
And that is why the Terminator was sent back to kill her and not the son, because without her, the son couldn't exist. And even if the Terminator is too late to stop the birth, if it can kill her before she can raise the son, then he doesn't become who he is. So, you know, Sarah Connor is never just a womb. And then Terminator Dark Fate is like, oh no, yeah, she was.
Yeah.
And this movie is going to be the feminist movie that redeems the first film. It's like, no, you completely missed the point. The first film actually was feminist because it depicts a woman who, by her own admission, can't even balance her checkbook, being confronted by forces beyond her reckoning, who, but by necessity, has to find a strength and leadership qualities in herself that she didn't actually know she had. And in Terminator 2, you know,
Right.
we're reintroduced to her. She's progressed from where we saw her at the end of the first film. She, in many ways, she's in a very bad place emotionally. She's kind of messed up in the head, in a very dark place mentally and emotionally that she has to climb out of. But in the first film, she's well on her way to becoming that warrior woman that Kyle Reese fell in love with, and actually undergoes a further growth and evolution within the story, which is actually supposed to happen. So these are very character-driven films that depict women and minorities in actually very positive lights. Because Miles Bennett Dyson, who's played by Joe Morton, he's not played off because he's the guy who basically reverse engineers the computer chip from the first Terminator to create Skynet. He's not some evil mad scientist or anything. He's a dedicated family man. You know, maybe works too much and in danger of neglecting his family, but you know, he deeply cares about them and his work. And he's very intelligent, and he's the one who actually helps them when he realizes, you know, what his creation is going to do in the future. He makes the decision to help them try and stop all this from happening. So he's not. And if you watch Joe Morton's body of work, he was in this excellent television show on the Sci-Fi Channel before it became a Sci-Fi channel. Oh my God! Talk about shitting the bed as a network. But yeah, there's a whole history behind that. But he was in this wonderful TV show called Eureka, which is about a small town populated by super geniuses, and the sheriff, played by Morley Schaefer, is injured during the course of an investigation into this Easter egg that it's kind of like the MacGuffin of the entire show. Ultimately, and then the main actor comes in as he's not quite a genius, but he and his daughter come to live there because he becomes a new marshal or sheriff of that town, and he has to kind of babysit all these geniuses and all their antics. But Joe Morton's character has this wonderful story arc where, you know, it's very fleshed out and has a lot of emotional pathos to it, that you really feel for the guy and what he's going through, and you know, that is the kind of representation you want in Hollywood, where people of color, women, LGBTQIA, you know, whatever minority you can think of, where you depict them as actual human beings with thoughts and feelings and emotions, and who undergo spiritual growth, even if they don't necessarily win at the end, even if they end up dying at the end, but they still have grown in a way that allows the audience to grow and learn with them. And that's how you do representation. Right. I mean, pick any Sidney Poitier movie from the 1960s and 70s, and you get that.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, I'm Gen X, you know, born in '74, and my family were late adopters, so I got to watch all the movies on late night television and local stations that broadcast all this old stuff from like the 60s and 70s, and So that's how I got my first introduction to the Hollywood Renaissance, where you could actually tell these gripping stories with social and political commentary and get away with it, that you just can't do now without coming under fire, because it's so it's done so obviously and ham-handedly that people reject it, because it comes across like you're talking down to them. And that's my major problem, because my problem is not that Hollywood is woke. My problem is that Hollywood is not woke enough or at all, and only tries to put on the appearance of being woke. But if you look at Disney, for all it pretends to be LGBTQIA friendly, but it's donating to all these anti-gay, anti-trans lawmakers who then pass bills, trying to eradicate trans people from existence.
Yeah.
And out of all public life. Yeah. So, and then of course it's giving money to chains like Chick-fil-A and all these other organizations. So really a lot of this stuff, Target is the same thing. Target came under fire recently for dropping its clothing lineup targeting queer people for sales. Hey, come buy our themed T-shirts and other stuff and whatever. But but the moment it was politically expedient to do so, it dropped those campaigns, because that support was never actually there. It was a marketing point to sell product. Yeah, and if that's the only reason why you're engaging on it, then you're not actually woke. You're just pretending to be. And that, in a lot of ways, is actually worse than being genuinely woke. Because if you're genuinely woke, that is, you're simply bringing awareness, waking people up to a systemic injustice, which is what the actual genuine definition of wokeness is. Mm-hmm. You can do that without talking down to people and have some actual substance to it. But if you're just doing it to mask activities that would get you criticized and lose you sales, because people find out how phony you are, that's not being woke. And then it adds fuel to the fire of the actual bigots who attack anything that even hints of featuring a non-white person or non-heterosexual cis person.
Right. Exactly.
Because the bigot brigade, as I like to call them, their complaint whenever they drag out the charge of wokeness is something that merely has a presence of non-white, non-heterosexual, non-cis characters.
Yeah.
But the problem is Hollywood doesn't help that by having characters like, say, with the Velma reboot, where you're making her a dark-skinned lesbian mean girl who helps railroad Freddy, the white guy, into a false murder conviction because reasons. And then it doesn't even have Scooby-Doo in it. It's like the original Scooby-Doo cartoon came out in 1969, and it was about a bunch of teenagers and their talking dog solving mysteries as they travel about the country. That's it. It was a kids show. You don't really get any hint of romance between Fred and Daphne until the 1990s, when Johnny Bravo was on the air, and they had this crossover episode where Johnny Bravo is hitting on Daphne, and Daphne wants to make Fred jealous, so she pretends to cozy up to Johnny Bravo, and that's where you get the whole thing. And then the shippers come in and decide, okay, well, we're going to make Velma a lesbian, just because. Why do we want to make Velma a lesbian?
Yeah.
Because she dresses frumpily and wears glasses? Hello, stereotype much?
Yeah.
This is what you call wokeness?
Yeah. Very stereotypical.
This is what you call taking back whatever from the man? No, that's not wokeness. That's actually an insult to lesbians. Because one, you're doing a rather shameless stereotype, and two, you're depicting the lesbian in the most negative light possible, so that she's an unlikable bitch. I mean, it's like with Stephen.
It's her in the movement.
It's like with Stephen Moffat TV shows. He was doing Sherlock and Doctor Who, and then Dracula, and all of his LGBTQIA characters are either the comic relief or the evil insane person, where it's implied that their queerness is a symptom of insanity. That is a negative stereotype, and you're using that to try and fake representation, but that's not actually representation when the only depiction we get of minority characters is almost universally negative.
Yep, that's
like,
true.
Yeah, I mean, you go and watch, like, say, Deep Space Nine, which had no problem doing politically charged stories, especially Far Beyond the Stars and its sequel episode, where Avery Brooks plays a character who, like, the premise of the episode is that the Deep Space Nine is fiction, and that a character named Benny in the quote-unquote real world in 1950s is a story writer for this pulp magazine, and he wants to get credit for writing, but he's a black man in the 1950s, so ultimately he has a breakdown when he realizes that no matter how hard he tries to be accepted, white society is never going to allow him to be who he wants to be, which is an acknowledged author and someone who's taken seriously within the writing community. So and it was wonderfully written and acted, and considering it was only a few years after the LA riots following the beating of Rodney King, that this kind of resonates, because the message of the stories is, no matter how far we think we've come with regards to race relations, we haven't come nearly far enough.
Exactly.
And then you've got stories like In the Pale Moonlight, which is, I think, probably one of Deep Space Nine's and one of Avery Brooks's strongest episodes, where Benjamin Sisko, because there's a war going on with this alien empire from the other side of the galaxy, and the Federation is losing, and he's trying to bring the Romulan Empire in to try and fight, because even with the Federation and the Klingons combining their forces against the bad guys, it's still not enough. And so he ends up doing things in that episode. I won't give much more away because spoilers. And I also want people to go watch it. But he makes choices that ultimately compromise his values and ultimately determine his fate at the end of the show. And as a result, the story arc for Benjamin Sisko, the character, becomes much more layered and complex than William Shatner's James T. Kirk, or even Patrick Stewart's Jean-Luc Picard ever got. And considering this was played by Avery Brooks, very talented actor who played Hawk on Spencer for Hire, like one of the ultimate badasses of television at the time. I mean, you get a heavy actor of that caliber with this level of writing. I mean, that is representation, man.
Oh yeah.
That's the kind of shit we need.
Yeah. Hey,
I'm sorry, but what's the point of having a queer crying Doctor Who played by Nujudi Gatwa, who's basically getting ready to leave the show because BBC, as usual, is taking its flagship series for granted, and Disney's looking likely to bail on the show if its projected ratings are good, because the most recent season for Doctor Who or Timeless Child or wherever the hell it is now, they're not great, to put it mildly. And then they've already wrapped up. They already did like 2 seasons, and it's like, wait, so they shot 2 seasons and they already renewed it for a third before the first has even aired, and you don't even know how well the first season is going to do.
Exactly. That don't make any sense.
Yeah. So
what's up?
And then the problem with season 1 of the new Doctor Who or Timeless Child or whatever it's called now, it was basically came in the wake of Chris Chinball's decision to turn the Doctor into the Timeless Child, which is a kind of a riff. I'll link you to an episode I did for my other channel where I explain kind of the backstory of the Cartmel Master Plan. But basically, the original premise behind Doctor Who, when it debuted in 1963, was about a time traveling alien about whom we know almost nothing. And after something like 20 years or 26 years on the air, the mystery kind of gone out because you're fleshing it out over the course of decades and developing little bits about his backstory, his homeworld, his society he comes from, and all this other stuff, and his own personal history, which we're not supposed to know much of. Otherwise, it wouldn't be Doctor Who. So the Cartmel Master plan was intended to kind of re-inject some mystery into the character, and this was after the idea of casting a woman as the next Doctor was shot down, which personally I thought it would have been a great idea if they had just gone with that. But they ended up going with Sylvester McCoy, which I'm not complaining about because he was incredible in that as a seventh Doctor. But I really wish that they had decided after McCoy's run had ended that they had just gone ahead and cast a woman in the role and not had any build up to it, because it would have opened up a lot of possibilities, because now we're exploring aspects of the Doctor's alien physiology and culture that we haven't really explored before, because if you can regenerate into a different gender or a different race, skin color, as it were, well, how does that affect such things as sexism or chauvinism or racism on that planet? Do they even exist, or does it get transferred somehow? Like, for example, during the Stephen Moffat era, where head writer Stephen Moffat brought back the character of the Master, but he brought the Master back as a woman, played by Michelle Gomez, and now the Master is a rival Time Lord who's very chauvinistic, very, very anti-woman. Thinks of them as a lower life form, basically. So when the Master is gender swapped into a female version, now she has a low opinion of men.
Yeah.
So you're taking that chauvinism and flipping it on its, so that basically the Master looks down on pretty much anyone who doesn't fit who he or she happens to be at that given incarnation. So that actually is how you do it right. By the way. So, but you could explore that, but I don't think that the Cartmel Master plan was actually ever intended to pay off. It was more like a Magic Mystery Box before the Magic Mystery Box existed as a concept, and rightfully it was dropped. Especially after it got canceled in 1989, and then Russell Davies revived it in 2005. And this was after a failed 1996 backdoor pilot TV movie starring Paul McGann that was a co-production with the United States, specifically Fox Studio. But he brought it back, and they never really brought back the Cartmel Master plan. And then Chris Chibnall, after Stephen Moffat left as head writer, Chris Chibnall, who doesn't know shit about writing science fiction, he's okay at writing character-driven mystery dramas, as he did with Broadchurch, but he's horrible at science fiction. In fact, some of the episodes he wrote for Doctor Who were among the weakest of the revived series. So he comes in and decides, no, I'm going to swipe the Cartmel Master plan and make my version of it, and completely fucked it up. So after he left in 2022, then you've got a problem over at the BBC. The execs are like, okay, Stephen Moffat ran the show into the ground. Chris Chibnall buried it. We've got to try and resurrect it somehow. Let's bring back Russell T Davies. Well, Russell T Davies in 2023 is not Russell T Davies circa 2008 or 2009. He's obviously no longer at his best. And then on top of that, Disney is providing a lot of the funding for the new Doctor Who, because it's basically a soft reboot, starring Ncuti Gatwa as the new Doctor. He's like the 14th or 15th or 16th, whatever number Doctor they say he is now. The billionth Doctor, who knows? But the problem is they had like only 8 episodes for the last season, and that's just too few. So it feels like you're getting an incomplete story, and we're expected to kind of flesh out all the stuff in between. It's like, no, you
Yeah.
can't do that. You're writing half a story. You need at least 16 episodes. Now, Russell Davies kind of pushed it with 13 episodes for his original run. Like each series had 13 episodes plus a Christmas special, so basically a total of 14. Now with Moffat, he kind of started off with that, but it kind of went down like 12 or 13 episodes, and then Chinball, or I'm sorry, Chibnall. I call him Chinball because he's got like weird chin, but he's decided, no, we're going to go 10 episodes, no 9, no 8, because God forbid that we should actually spend any of this inflated budget we have on actually telling characters stories so that we can invest in them emotionally and therefore feel bad for them and want them to win when horrible things happen to them within a given episode. God forbid we should ever do that. Which is only what we've been doing in cinema and storytelling for centuries. But no, we have to have 8 episodes where it's like no character development, no growth.
Right, exactly.
Copywriting and editing, and overemphasis on CGI and shipping relationships that never had any room to grow or develop. So they come off feeling forced.
Yeah.
I just want Doctor Who, Star Trek, and Star Wars to be Doctor Who, Star Trek, and Star Wars again. Okay, I hated the Battlestar Galactica reboot, which went in the opposite direction of making it a nihilistic Hack Snyder like soap opera melodrama set in space, which but also very conservative bent to it. And then V, which was originally a 1980s TV show that paralleled space Nazis, basically, which is like basically lizard people disguised as humans, dressed in very Nazi-esque uniforms, and then they turn out to be actual space Nazis. Doing their own version of the Holocaust on humanity. So anyway, in 2008, this was during the 2008 election, and it's kind of obvious that CBS, which was the network that created this show, it was pretty sure that Les Moonves, who was the CEO of CBS at that time, he wanted something that was very much more Trumpian and birther oriented, portraying the visitors as being very much like Obama and Democrats promising things while implying that they were right from the get-go that they were bad guys. Whereas the original miniseries, you kind of don't find that out until like maybe 3/4 of the way through.
Yeah.
Because there were actually 2 miniseries. Like the first one in 1984, and then a year later, you had the second miniseries, which wraps it up, and then you had a TV show continuing all that, but it only lasted 1 season because of low ratings. But yeah, so the Battlestar Galactica and V reboots were very conservative oriented, and those were equally awful because they took the original premise and kind of filtered it through modern politics. It got overly preachy, and it was clear that the very cynical and pessimistic worldview, and a lot of nihilism in there too. It's like, who cares? It's like people are born to die. It's like, what the fuck?
Yeah, just.
And Battlestar Galactica and New Trek, they're kind of over-sexing it up.
Yeah.
And then for The Last Jedi and the Rise of Palpatine, you've got this forced thing between Kylo Ren, who's like emo Vader, and then Rey Palpatine or Rey Ma Rae Sue or whoever she's called, whatever, played by Daisy Ridley. But it's incredibly forced. So you've got like people who I hesitate to say grew up because they never really did, but they spent their nominal childhoods writing bad fanfic, and then they went to film school, decided they didn't have to pay attention in screenwriting class. And why, when you're a nepo baby, or you decide, I'm just gonna ignore everything that I learned in screenwriting class and just do my own thing, and pat myself on the back and never have anyone actually read back my own work to me so that I can get an idea of what I need to actually improve. Because when you're going out on the promo circuit for your movie, but you started writing before the previous one was even completed, and you're saying this is 90% my first draft, and it just happens to be the middle part of a trilogy that Disney invested hundreds of $1 million in, and you need it to clear $1 billion at the box office, and it fails to do that, you're in trouble. You never go to production with a first draft for good reason, because a first draft is basically your rough draft. It has to go through polishing.
Yeah, you got to polish it, you got to reform it, you got to
I mean,
transcend
sometimes
it.
you go
Yeah.
like 2, 3, or more rewrites before you get something that the studio will actually
Except
commit to. And then and even for Superman the movie, which I think is one of the best probably the best comic book movie of all time, Mario Puzo, who wrote the original story for it, that the screenplay he gave to Richard Donner in the studio, it was unusable because it was so overly long, and then it's like so someone else had to come in and kind of condense it down into what we ended up getting onto screen, and even then they were kind of pushing it. But Mario Puzo, who wrote the Godfather trilogy, did come up with something that served as a basis for what they ended up going into production with.
Yeah.
And that film, like I said, I mean, I think it is quite arguably the best superhero film of all time.
Yeah, it's up there. Yeah, I agree. Any last words, Mike? This been a banger, man. We dropping banger after banger.
This is kind of like an episode of the Wilk Report instead of but because I think we spent half the time just rambling on about my thoughts on Hollywood and the state of writing, but
it's good.
I think though the point that I've been making in this entire rambling interview here is that the problem right now with Hollywood is that politics, like the extreme right-wing politics, and then fake liberal politics. And I think this is a discussion we need to have next time as to what actually is a liberal versus a conservative who masquerades as a liberal.
Oh yeah,
too many people
I got a lot to say about that.
When they mean, too many people use the word liberal when they mean Democrat. Democrats are not liberals, because if you actually look up the fucking dictionary definition of liberal, you cannot apply that to any Democrat in office right now, not even AOC or Bernie Sanders.
Exactly.
People still call them liberal. Yeah. And I'm trying to explain to people, no, read the actual fucking dictionaries are so stupid. It's like we're just going to redefine the word how we see fit. It's like it's not classical liberal. No, classical liberalism is a different creature from modern liberalism. Like the actual dictionary definition that we have is a completely different beast. Classical liberalism is more or less a form of Enlightenment mercantilism.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's not even what you would call actual liberalism as we're supposed to define it today. But you've got this like fake liberalism that puts on the appearance of being woke and panders to target demographics, but at its core, it's designed to actually kind of crush any attempts to awaken people to systemic injustices and to say that no, the status quo is the best that we can possibly do, and if you try to rock it in any way or do away with it in favor of something else, then that's evil, and that needs to be fought even worse than anything that is genuinely evil. Because that's the overarching message of MCU and the DC EU and even Star Trek to an extent right now. It's like, don't fuck with the status quo. It's as bad as it is. It's the best we're ever going to have, and you should never, under any circumstances, try to change it, even for the better.
Yeah.
And that's fake liberalism to a T.
Yeah.
And that's what the fake woke is. But if you want to go genuinely woke, I recommend watching shows like Good Times, All in the Family, You can go another one. You can go In the Heat of the Night, both the film and the TV show.
Yeah.
Like Carol O'Connor and then of course there's Rock, starring Charles S. Dutton, which ran for I think like 3 seasons from like 1989 to 1991, I think. That was an incredible show. It was my favorite show. I liked it better than Martin because Martin Lawrence, he's funny when he wants to be, but Martin Lawrence had his shtick kind of playing to black stereotypes for laughs. I mean, you're supposed to laugh at the stereotypes, but ultimately, I think it kind of reinforced them in a way, and in a way that I think was unhealthy. Whereas you look at a TV show like Rock, which kind of played it straight, working class black family, that they had their share of serious episodes that really showcase the acting talents of the cast and the level of writing and played to people's strengths. And then you had also shows like In Living Color, which had a lot of social and political commentary that being a little bit too racy even for Fox at that time, which is why Keenen Ivory Wayans ended up getting pushed out. And after that, the show kind of went downhill because it was no longer doing it what it was originally supposed to. But you get shows like that. That is, if you want to see real wokeness, go watch that stuff. That's what I grew up on.
Classics, man. You bringing up a lot of classics. I like all those shows, by the way. Okay, guys, that wraps up episode 7 of the A&M podcast. Sorry if I was a little bit quiet on this episode. I think I have a cold. I'm not sure, but I'm getting over it. Huh?
You talk too much.
I talk too much. Nah.
No, please, don't, feel free to interrupt me, okay? Because I go off on a rant, and then I forget that there's other people here who want to get a word in edgewise. It comes from a childhood where I was never allowed to speak. So when I grew up,
you good. You good. I let you cook, man. Like I let See, I cook enough on my other 2 shows, but the next episode I'm gonna talk a lot more.
Yeah, you are pretty fire on your solo shows, and I wish I could match half the energy that you bring to the table.
Oh man, yeah, man.
And you're able to focus better than I can because I tend to go off on a rant and get sidetracked and stuff, and before I come back to the topic at hand. But yeah, I mean, I wish I had your focus.
Yeah, but you fire though, man. Like when you talk, like for real, I listen to everything you say. I learn a lot from you. Like this is what I love about this podcast. Like I'm still learning about this. Stuff like
thanks. I do try to keep learning myself because I figured that the moment I stop thinking that I have anything to learn, that's when you need to shut me up.
Yeah.
That's why I don't call myself a good man or necessarily a man. I try to let my words and actions define whether or not I'm a good person or a man. Because if I start thinking that I'm already a man, then to me that means I've already reached the end goal and don't need to grow any further.
Yeah.
And so I would say I'm still in the process of growing up into my final form. So maybe I'll be Shin Godzilla's final form. Maybe I'll be Godzilla -1's final form. I don't know, but but I so wanted to see a sequel to Shin Godzilla, but apparently Toho decided no, we're just going to go with another reboot, which don't get me wrong, Godzilla -1 was great. I'm looking forward to Godzilla -2, but I wish I would have gotten a sequel to Shin Godzilla because that one was kind of like taking Godzilla back to basics.
Yeah, definitely. All right, Mike, man. I can't wait till next week, man. I'm telling you, that next episode, that's gonna be the one, man. Yeah, I got a lot to say about that. Okay. So yeah, guys, be sure to follow us on Twitter. All our links is on the ticker below. And also, to the A&M podcast has its own separate YouTube channel as well, and we also have a podcast. So yeah, we all over the place. All right, Mike. See you next week or tomorrow.
Yes, good
Yeah.
night and good luck.
All right. Peace out, everybody.